What's going on, everyone? My name is Jake Brown here with Duncan Irvine, and this is the new episode of A Cup of Coffee, the podcast about everything PNW sports. So let's start off with the Seattle Seahawks, who, for the first time in what seems like weeks, have finally won a game heading into the bye week.
Yeah, I'm kind of, you say it feels like it's been weeks. It's because it really literally has been weeks. Honestly, I think, like I said last week, it was going to be kind of interesting to see what happened if they lost this game. I'm really glad they didn't because I think Seahawks Twitter would have burned. But I mean, you have to take care of business against the Jaguars. I don't care who's playing at quarterback.
Yeah, and it's not like Geno Smith has been terrible. I mean, he as a starter for the Seahawks. Let me pull it up really quickly because I saw a tweet on this like yesterday, and I sent it to you. Geno Smith stats over his last three starts: 55 for 78. That is a 70.5 completion percentage for 571 yards, five touchdowns, four pass, one rush, no interceptions, one fumble, 13 sacks, and a 1-2 record. So would you say that this is above expectations, met expectations, or is below expectations?
I feel like it's just about. I don't think any Seahawks fan expected him to be Russell Wilson. I think maybe you could ask for a little bit more from him. Because honestly, he makes a couple more plays and they win the game against the Steelers. They win the game against the Saints, and you're looking at they're being in a much better position for playoffs. I think at the end of the day, it's Geno Smith. You're only going to get so much. So I think I'd say he's met expectations, but a lot of people hope for more.
Yeah, and like I was kind of blown away by Geno Smith, especially in the Jaguars games where it seemed like he dressed up as Russell Wilson for Halloween. But I mean, that was the Jaguars. Like, if you're going to suck against the Jaguars, I'm really
Mm-hmm.
bad. So I mean, he wasn't the only guy to go off in the Jaguars game. There was Tyler Lockett going off with over 140 receiving yards. DK Metcalf had two touchdowns. One of them was like a huge moss over the cornerback. And Quandre Diggs became the first active player to have three interceptions over the last five seasons, three or more
Yeah,
interceptions.
I was a little bit nervous when the Seahawks didn't pay him at the start of the season. I'm even more nervous now just because I feel like he's kind of the one of the more underrated players across the league. He's been playing better than Jamal Adams this season. Um, I think this is just more proof than ever that they needed to pay this guy when they had the chance.
And people forget that Quandre Diggs started out as a cornerback for uh, for the Detroit Lions. My partner will be right back. There he is.
Sorry, I thought I had an emergency, but we're good.
We're good. What I said is that what people forget is that Quandre Diggs started as a cornerback when he was drafted by the Detroit Lions.
Yeah, he's a ball hawk. I mean, that's kind of, I know that's a generic way everybody describes safeties as that, but I mean, you only player with three or more interceptions in each of the last five seasons. You really can't ask for much more than that.
No, and you can't. And one of the biggest questions uh, coming into not next week, but the week after is Russell Wilson is projected to be back that week from his finger injury he suffered on Thursday Night Football against the Rams. And Aaron Rodgers might not even play because of the COVID protocol thing. That's, we could go off about that for a while. So do you think that Russell Wilson is going to start against the Packers, or will we see another Geno Smith start?
I think Russell's going to be back just because I don't know if you saw his Instagram post. I think the caption's like, no more pin, time to win, or something like that. I think he's one of those guys that he's going to do everything in his power to get back on the field. And conversely, I think Rodgers is going to play too. Um, Barring anything unexpected, I mean, he's literally been the best quarterback in the league over however long time frame you want to set it. I know whatever I can't don't know how to phrase it exactly. The day that he's going to come back will be the day before the Seahawks game, theoretically, and I think he's good enough that he doesn't really need much more time than that to prepare. So he might not be his top self, but I do think he'll play.
Yeah, and this isn't to knock Aaron Rodgers on his playing ability because he is, like you said, the best quarterback in the league right now for as many years as you want to say it is, or if you want to say Tom Brady, depending on how long it's been. Uh, I just, it the Pat McAfee show this morning was just really, really makes me not like the guy as a person. So, whatever. Uh, I'm surprised he didn't get suspended by the league because of for lying about being immunized. So,
I think anybody but Aaron Rodgers or Tom Brady gets suspended for that. I
yeah.
don't know. Maybe I'm not really sure. I just kind of saw the headline in passing. Something about them investigating into what all is going on behind the scenes here. I think maybe that's something to look at. But regardless, with appeals and all that, I think Rodgers will play against Seattle.
All right. Moving on to the NBA. We're doing the NBA before the college football segment this time. Uh, Damien Lillard had a freestyle rap earlier in the week. I think it was on Saturday, right after we concluded our show, about how he feels like if he was on a super team, it would be his Achilles heel, and he wants to die on this lonely hill, just like Giannis or Gary Payton. What do you think of his comments as the Blazers continue to struggle?
Yeah, so obviously they went 1-3 since our last show. They went 0-3 on their road trip. Lost to Charlotte, the 76ers without Joel Embiid, and the Cleveland Cavaliers. None of those teams are world beaters by any means. Like you said, this is a quote I found I saw after their loss. I'm not sure who it was against, but he said, if I was to get a championship for Portland, I would cry on the spot. I would really cry, bro. I want to win a championship here. I don't know how rewarding it would feel for me at this point if I won somewhere else. So hopefully this will shut down the ever churning rumor mill about him going somewhere else. And I do think he really wants to stay in Portland, as bad as this team is. They're in a difficult spot though, because they can keep him, ride it out, and just kind of keep running it back with slightly different teams, or they can trade him away and try to just start from scratch.
Honestly, and I know it's only been 10 games, 11 games into the season. I just think that if the Blazers want to compete in the future, they have to get rid of his contract and just build from scratch again. I
I would
know
agree. I think
there's
that's the common sense option. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but it's hard when this dude has literally been their franchise for the past half decade. Better, I guess it's better part of a decade now at this point. But it's hard to just, I mean, like you saw with Von Miller and the Rams, just to trade away that dude who is like almost synonymous with your franchise, especially if they're not asking for it. So that's why I think it's tough from an emotional standpoint. Obviously, it makes sense when you look at it on paper, but in terms of principle, it's a lot tougher.
and I know in basketball that there's a lot more players say when it comes to being
Mhm.
traded and where they want to be traded. I know the NFL was sort of leaning that direction as well. But to me, it's just the business of sports in general. Sometimes you have to trade away your best player so that you can build a hypothetically better team in the future, even if it's without Damian Lillard. So, I mean, we can talk about Damian Lillard possibly being traded or not being traded up until the trade deadline. So maybe he
Yeah,
will die on this lonely hill.
we'll see what happens. I think it's definitely an interesting story to follow, but unfortunately, I don't think there's much they can do in the immediate future to kind of remedy this situation.
Yeah. But let's move on to college football, and let's start off with Washington State University, who came into Tempe and shocked uh, the Arizona State Sun Devils, including myself in attendance, uh, as they forced 5 turnovers, 4 of them in a row. and oh my, and that was in front of the 96 Arizona State Rose Bowl team in the 25-year anniversary of that team. Oh boy, what was that?
I didn't actually get to watch any of the game. I did receive your text updates though, which was very entertaining from a third party perspective. I think this Washington State team, we're going to talk about it in a little bit, but I don't know what Nick Rolovich was doing. They seem to have figured it out and turned it around.
Well, they did it without Nick Rolovich last game too, and
Well, that's what I'm saying. I don't know what he had going on, if he was bringing them down or what the deal was, but they've certainly kind of switched up the whole narrative now.
Well, I really don't think Nick Rolovich is that great of a coach in the first place, despite his political agenda.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that, and I don't think he's gonna win his appeal, to be honest. But it's sometimes you're just better without the coach that's being paid millions of dollars.
Which seems crazy to think about, but I think this might be one of those cases.
Yeah, and I don't think they were the only team that won without a head coach. I think it was, was it Vanderbilt that won a game last weekend without a head coach?
I don't know. I don't think they. I want to say no. I'll look it up real quick though while you keep talking.
Anyway, while you're looking that up, I will say that Nick Rolovich is appealing his resignation from Washington State University and will be back for a period of time until the NCAA or Washington State or whatever is overseeing the appeal either denies it, accepts it, whatever. So that's what's
So
going on with Rolovich.
Vanderbilt did lose, and I don't believe they fired their coach yet. So
okay. He might get fired.
Yeah. But on the Rolovich stuff, I had to write about this for a school paper actually. We don't really know what his appeal was or what his reasoning was in the first place. We know it was a religious exemption. Not sure what the details of that were. I think it's gonna be really interesting to see what the result of this is. Part of me, I hate to say that I agree with him, but I wonder what the point of having religious exemptions available if you're not going to give them to anybody. And like I said, granted, his reasons may have been entirely BS, but if he did have legitimate claims, then it seems kind of, I don't know. It's something just doesn't sit right with me with having the option for religious exemptions if you're essentially not going to give them out to anybody.
That's true. And you have to wonder what the parameters of a religious exemption is. It can't be like, oh, I'm Catholic, therefore I'm not going to have a vaccine in me. Like that.
Yeah.
Is it that, or is it, because you can have religious exemptions for holidays, but you can't have religious exemptions for health or for vaccine. While I disagree with the religious exemptions in the first place, doesn't mean that if you have them available, like, why are you just whatever? That's a whole topic for another day.
But yeah.
Let's move on to the other side of the state of Washington with the University of Washington, who came back to beat Stanford in California for the first time in 14 years. Did you watch any of the game?
I did. I got to watch a little bit of the second half. Again, y'all probably tired of hearing me say this. Dylan Morris, not great again, 68% completions for only 168 yards. They won this game 20-13, but it was ugly. And I think he's definitely not the answer, and it might be time to get Sam Heward some more serious reps.
Yeah, because there's only one touchdown for Washington the entire game. That was the one that came late in the game, in the final minutes or so. And whoever had Washington's kicker on their fantasy team got a lot of fantasy points that day. I mean, four field goals that entire day is amazing, unprecedented. It was 13-12 at one point. That's how That's how messy this game was.
Yeah, I think this says more about how bad Stanford is than any merit that Washington has.
And I think the more bad Stanford gets this season, the more it might affect the University of Oregon, who we'll get to in just a little bit, because that means that Oregon lost to literally one of the worst teams in the Pac-12, if not the worst, next to U of A and Colorado.
Yeah, it seems like each week we come on here talking about a new worst team in the Pac-12. So I think it's kind of a revolving door at this point until these teams play each other and we can really figure it out.
Well, I think U of A is like categorically the worst since they're the only winless team and they had to have a tryout in the middle of the season because everybody was hurt. So I know they're my university rival, but it's just sad to watch.
Yeah.
It makes the Territorial Cup not competitive, and you want to see that stuff. But Washington will face Oregon this weekend on either Friday or Saturday. I think it's Friday. And this should be a blowout, just like Oregon did against Colorado last weekend, where they beat a 52-29 and are now in the top 4 in the college football playoff. What do you think of this upcoming game this weekend?
I have been waiting all week to talk about this, not because any storylines. Like you said, this game, I feel like Oregon's going to win it something like 49-17. But all the stuff, I can't remember what the exact question was. Somebody asked Washington head coach Jimmy Lake at the beginning of the week something about the recruiting strategy versus Oregon. And he was basically like, we prefer to compete with the Stanfords and the Notre Dames and schools with more academic prowess. And oh boy, he should not have said that because it just opened up Pandora's box. I saw the Oregon Duck change his profile picture to Harry the Husky, which is Washington's mascot.
I did see
and
that.
change his name on Twitter and everything. And if they get their break speed off him this week, it is going to be ugly because this game usually has a lot of hate in it, but you just are adding fuel to the fire when you say something about academic prowess, which doesn't even really matter.
It doesn't, because this is football we're talking about, not you're not competing over what grades your students are getting or the graduation rates you're getting. It's about football in this game.
It's Oregon. They should come out and just beat the crap out of them, but we'll see.
Yeah, there's a reason why Oregon could get into the college football playoff and Washington is a bottom feeder in the Pac-12 North. I say that Oregon wins. I think it's going to be a similar score to last week against Colorado. I think there's not going to be as much offense for Washington again, since their offense is so bad. I think it's going to be 56-10. I think it's going to be a little wider margin. It's still going to be a blowout. And if Washington somehow wins this game, I don't know what the reaction of fans in Eugene are going to be.
It's going to be ugly for sure. There will be buildings burning to the ground. That's all I can say.
Yeah, there will be a riot in Oregon, and it will not be pretty. Speaking of a team in Oregon, Oregon State loses by 2 scores to Cal, and they face Colorado this upcoming weekend. I don't think we can say much more about how this is just really surprising, because I feel like Oregon State has just been one of those teams, like you can't tell if they're pretenders or contenders for the Pac-12 North.
Yeah, like you said, we came on here the first week talking about how they potentially can make a run at the Pac-12 North title. And here they are losing to one of the worst teams in the Pac-12. So it just blows my mind, honestly. I don't really know how to even describe it.
Yeah, me neither, because it's just when I look at Oregon's record, because they're about 500. Let me pull up Oregon State's record. 1 second. So obviously they face Colorado this upcoming weekend, as I said, tomorrow at 4 uh, Pacific time, I should say. They lost to Washington State. But then they beat Utah, and then they go and lose to Cal. And the week before Washington State, the weeks before with Washington State, they beat teams they should have beat, like Washington, USC, Idaho, Hawaii, Purdue. Like those are all teams that you're supposed to beat, and then you go and face Washington State and lose to them, and then beat Utah that came, had that comeback win against Arizona State, and then lost to Cal. Makes no sense to me.
I
This
think
team
it's kind
doesn't
of
make
that
sense to me.
that circle of suck idea where just everybody's terrible.
Mhm.
And I don't know if there really is any way to explain it other than that.
Anyway, Colorado, not much to say about them. They're just really bad. What do you think in your prediction for this week's game?
I think Oregon State will win something like 28-24. I think it's going to be close and relatively low scoring compared to what we've seen from both of these teams.
Yeah, I think it'll also be close. I think it's going to be a 21-18 game. I don't trust and I think OSU comes up on top, but I just don't trust their team in general as much as I
Yeah.
did at the beginning of or halfway point of this season. So who knows? So that concludes the college football segment because Oregon and Washington are facing each other this weekend, and Washington State is on a bye week. So let's talk about finally, let's talk about some hockey. So I will go off and talk about some hockey for a little bit. I didn't pay attention to a lot of hockey this week, but the Canucks are continuing to lose very close games. They were 1-1 this week. They won. They last game they won 3-2 against the New York Rangers, but the game before on the 30th they lost 2-1 to the first place Edmonton Oilers, and this week they face the Predators today and at home, and then they go and face the Stars on Sunday. Canucks face the Ducks on Tuesday to conclude a homestand, and then go to Colorado to face the Avalanche. So that's what we got this week for the Vancouver Canucks. For the Seattle Kraken, they're continuing to be one of the more inconsistent teams in hockey. And while that isn't really a surprise, they did come out and beat a team they should have beat in the Buffalo Sabres 5-2. Jordan Eberle had the first hat trick in Seattle Kraken history, with Philip Grubauer also having the first goalie assist in Seattle Kraken history. And the games before, since our last show, they lost to the Rangers 3-1, then lost the Oilers 5-2, and then they come out and beat the Sabres yesterday. And this week they face the Coyotes tomorrow, which I will be in attendance to that. And then they go to Vegas for a rematch with the Golden Knights. And then on Thursday they face the Anaheim Ducks at home, and that will conclude the road trip they have this weekend. So not a lot to say about either of these two teams. They're both tied for last place with 9 points. With the teams in front of them, that are kind of disappointing right now. Well, actually, I should correct myself. They're tied with the LA Kings right now for last place. But the Golden Knights and the Ducks have been kind of disappointing so far this season. So maybe the Kraken can steal a couple of games. The Canucks can steal a couple of games. So who knows? So that's what's going on in the world of hockey in the Pacific Northwest. And with that, that concludes a cup of coffee for this week's edition of this show. I am Jake Brown, and I am here with my partner, Duncan Irvine, and we will see you next week. If I can find the pause button. Bye.